Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello, it's Dr. Gemma, and welcome to episode 211 of the new series of the Cognitive Podcast. Well, we've all had Thanksgiving by the time you hear this, and I'm hoping yours was as merry and happy as mine was, although mine certainly had its strange aspect. But then that's what is the stuff of a great blather, isn't it? Your comments are very welcome. Please feel free to comment on our blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. Don't forget the K in the word knit in cognitive. Or you can comment on our group on Ravelry. Show notes are in both of those places. If you go to cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com, you will find a link to the group on Ravelry. Well, it's that time where I give warm thanks in the episode, and I'm just going to give it to all of you because it is that time of year, the time when we swing into a hopefully great season of thankfulness and warmth and family and hospitality. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I want to thank all of you, all of my listeners who've been with me at any time during this period, and especially those of you who've been hanging on since November of 2008. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Believe me, har har har. In 2008, I was not anticipating still doing this in 2024. So happy 16 years to us. Strange but true. Hey Gemma, what's on your hooks and needles? Well, I got Wooblin because I had the 4 days off this week. I'm recording this, by the way, at 2:34 p.m. on Sunday, December 1st. So right now, as you hear this, I am still on the 4th day of my 4 days off for Thanksgiving. So I got Woobling, and I finished Bernard the Elf. He is, of course, from the Woobles Advent Calendar 2023. He's an interesting guy. I went for darker, higher contrast colors than he has in the kit. And I just used regular size 4 acrylic yarn. I didn't use the Woobles yarn, which is a very thick cotton kind of yarn that's easy not to, stick your hook through the plies and all that. I didn't use that. I used the good old acrylic. When I made Bernard, the interesting thing about him is his hat comes out very big. And I've noticed this on not everyone's, but a few people's finished Bernards over in the Reddit groups I frequent. I'm not really sure what that's about. The hat's just a little bit large, but it's okay. I sewed it onto him, even though the instructions do not tell you to do that, because, did I mention the hat's just a little bit large? And right now, he's hanging on the tree through the loop in his hat because it's all on there very tight. He's a fun make. He's interesting and easy to do. He takes time because he's got a few add-ons like ears and hands and all that, and a little bit of embroidery on the belt. But he's very pleasant and easy. The hat is much simpler than I thought it was going to be. I thought it looked much more complicated than it is. Then I got down to the Gingerbread Man from, again, the Woobles Advent Calendar for 2023. Gingy here was easy and fun. He went very, very quickly. I did all of them last night except his arms and his bow tie and buttons. So I did those very quickly this morning. He's just an easy, fun go of it, and he comes out very cute. So there's the Gingerbread Man. And let's see what else. Well, we worked a little bit on the stash toss. We are now at 43 in versus 63 out. We lost a skein to moths this weekend. It was lost a long time ago. I started pulling it apart and thought, oh no, this has been exposed. And sure enough, yeah, pieces fell apart in my hand. So that's okay. But I did move on to prepping those socks, the sock tube from Steffi Jo. I was looking for yarn to do the feet that would not clash too desperately with the beautiful red of the legs. You may remember at CFRX, Steffi Jo brought a lot of sock tubes that she made on her sock knitting machine, and she gave me surely the most beautiful of them in these deep cherry red, bluish toned reds. And because I have bigger feet, I did not want to make them into just socks with very low leg pieces on them, very short legs. I decided to make them full-size socks, which meant that the tube that Steffi Jo gave me is going to be divided into 2 tubes, and that will be the leg for each sock. And I will add on, obviously, the instep and the heels in a different color yarn. So I've been trying to find a good yarn to do that with, because after all, if somebody's going to give me 2 free sock legs and all I have to do is do the feet, yeah, I'm going to do that. So we found that this weekend. That was one of our tasks for the weekend. Meanwhile, I worked a little bit on the foot of sock number 2 of the Yule socks, but I did not get to vestuary because we had a very strange sort of weekend, although profitable in its own way. I did work on more quilt squares. I'm currently working on 8 of them. You may remember that I am making squares following the log cabin pattern, which means you divide all your strips into light versus dark. And then you do a center square, and around it I'm going dark stripe, light stripe, light stripe. And I'm doing that twice. And I'm getting nice big squares here. And it's easy, you just do 1 stripe at a time on all your squares. So I started with 8 center blocks and added 1 stripe per day, and that's really what I'm doing. So these guys are almost done, and that will give me 8 more squares. I'm not really counting how many squares. What I am doing is just making all the squares I can. And here's why. If I'm going to make some kind of bed cover, that's going to be huge, and that's going to take a phenomenal number of squares. I would imagine at least 100. I'm not really doing measurements, but, I'm thinking 10 squares by 10 squares minimum. And we will see. That sounds about right. It might be 9 by 9, thinking of a queen size. At any rate, I'm not counting squares. I'm just making squares like crazy. And the reason is, when you do it the log cabin way, you basically cut a lot of long strips. And then you just are piecing a strip onto each side as you go. And you pin it on, and then you snip it to get rid of the excess of the strip. And the squares sometimes get a little wonky. They may get a little out of control. You may have cut some of the striping unevenly, whatever. So my feeling here is just make a whole humongous number of these squares. And then look for, I don't know if it'll be 100 or 81 squares that fit together really well, and those will become the quilt top. And everybody else is going to be things like pillows, and they can be for the Etsy store I plan to have the minute I retire. So the idea is I really am just working my way down through all these scraps of fabric that I cut into 2.5-inch strips. May I say it's really fun to do this. I am really stunned. I just have dozens of strips in every imaginable color. And I'm paying more attention now to the color value than I was when I started. I thought all strips can be divided easily into light and dark. That's not true. You get strips with medium sort of color value, and it gets very hard to determine what they are. So I've started putting them to the side because they can be different types of quilts, like a Roman stripe or something. So I'm having a blast with that. And I did spend time this weekend working on it, in that I was going to cut more fabric down because I still have a bunch of fabrics left over from my most recent skirts, and I found 1 or 2 old fabrics that I used, believe it or not, in the 1990s to make vests. I was going to cut those down, and instead I started sorting out in terms of color values to get light and dark strips piled up to make my next squares. When I did that, I found that I emptied a reasonable amount of my 20-gallon bin out. So I just started putting the uncut fabric in the 20-gallon bin as well to get it out of lying out exposed to light and dust and everything else, dogs, whatever. So I'm gradually doing that. I'm gradually trying to empty the bins a bit before I cut down the remaining fabrics into stripes. Now I would like to cut them down. It would be very helpful that some of them look like they would fit right in with what I'm doing. But at this point, I have so many stripes of fabric available in that 20-gallon tub that I don't have a good excuse yet. So we will see, but I just have a lot of plans and a lot of different shapes and sizes available in the fabrics. So it's making me very, very happy. So we are slowly moving on my quilt squares and organizing them. And right now I think I'm going to be up to about 19 or 20 squares when I finish these 8 that I'm working on now. So that's very pleasant. Meanwhile, nothing in Dizzy Blondes. I had hoped to spin, but my allergies are going through the roof right now. So let's get on to a strategy, shall we? Well, of course, we're talking about strategies now that we live in the U.S. as it is. And if you're not in the U.S., listen with a great deal of sympathy, will you? For one thing, I'm following a series of posts by the group called Feminist on Instagram, and they're talking about what do you do now because women's rights are so restricted in so many states for health care relating to reproduction. And Feminist and a few other sites are recommending that you change some of the apps you use. So I enclosed in the notes one of the apps they're recommending. This is an app called Signal, and this is for text messaging. The difference with Signal is it's end-to-end encryption. So you send it out, it's encrypted, and it's encrypted till the other person's app de-encrypts it. What I cannot tell is if both people have to be using Signal to do this. They say it's available for every platform. I have not explored it yet. But what they're talking about is if you are texting anything about your reproductive history or needs, you probably want it encrypted. You probably don't want some bot breaking into it and selling your information, particularly since it looks like in many states, if not federally, and I'm not sure about that now because of the upcoming change of administration. But it looks like that may be rateable by state, if not the federal government. So please, what I would tell you is avoid talking about these things in print if you can. And if you're going to think about end-to-end encryption. There are other apps that offer similar things, like I know the Proton app does this as well. It is free, although you can get a subscription as well. But at any rate, you can see the image from Instagram that Feminist and its related groups put up about using encrypted messaging. Meanwhile, slightly less serious, but not by much note, how to have a more sustainable Black Friday. I've been trying to do this for several years, and I was glad to see somebody finally put this into a meme. The first thing is to buy less and to choose well, which is make a list of what you need. Do not let yourself impulse buy. This is very challenging because, at least here in the U.S., prices drop hugely on Black Friday, which is another way of saying they've been artificially inflated all year round. Now, I want to say, too, that I have been saying for years a sort of alternative version of this, which is save your money all year round and do your shopping for necessities, clothing necessities, household goods at this time of year, which is what I'm doing right now. So, yes, I got trapped in the mall and I went and bought, the underclothing that I have needed for probably about 2 years because they had a 40% off sale. That's how you want to do it. You want to have cash stockpiled, and you don't want to go into debt. So you want to stockpile what cash you can, which, involves sacrifice all year round, to be honest. But then on Black Friday, congratulations. I am busy restocking the house. For example, I've bought healthy soaps, healthy shampoos, healthy toilet bowl cleaners, all the things that are green and don't have pollutants in them, that are biodegradable. And I went out and got underclothing, and we also restocked things like the necessities for my son and my husband, socks, underwear. My son needs a few new pairs of pants. And currently we are restocking him on running clothing. He has only run in fair weather, and suddenly now that he's out of his running club because he aged out, he has to think about exercise all year round, which, since we live near the warm zone of Southern California, wasn't a problem. In other words, he could be on a track club at his school, and it's down in the warm zone, and he never got out of shorts the whole year. Whereas up where we are, we get snow. Believe it or not, this stuff is half an hour drive apart, but that's the way Southern California is. So we realize if he's going to run locally, he's got to have warmer clothes. So we're working on that as well. At any rate, buy less, buy what you need, choose very carefully, use a list. The next thing is opt for quality, not quantity. So invest in durable, high-quality products, not in cheap things that won't last. The frightening statistic, 80% of the clothing bought on Black Friday in America will be in a landfill within 12 months. In other words, that's fast fashion, cheaply made clothing. If you've never learned to sew, I'm sorry, but you should look at the seams. When you buy clothing, you should turn it inside out and look at the seams. Are they going to hold together? Now, this doesn't mean you can't buy it, but you want to take a good look at it. If the seams don't look good, take them home and run them through your own sewing machine. Consider that, though, when you're buying them as part of the price. It shouldn't be that expensive if it's that badly made. But if you're looking at fabric that pierces easily and the holes are very exaggerated around the cheaply done stitches, please don't buy it. This is also a moment where you think about the fact that since you're listening to this podcast, you can probably make a considerable amount of your own clothing and it's going to be very durable. I say this because right now I'm wearing a skirt that I made 30 years ago with a simplicity idiot level pattern. However, with beautiful fabric and good fabric, and it has lasted 30 years. In fact, my seam work with just a cheap little $90 Singer sewing machine from the 90s, that the seam work is so good, it's the fabric that's wearing out from repeated washings for 30 years. That's how you want to do it. When you knit your own, when you make your own socks, your own vests, your own sweaters, and outerwear, again, that's how you want to do it. Your stuff is going to last longer. Instead of buying cheaply made stuff in quantity, go for quality. Think about secondhand always. Thrift stores and online marketplaces are great if you want stuff that's been gently used and is unique. Remember, if you're us, if you're a maker, that is a knitter, a crocheter, a quilter, a seamstress, a dyer, you have a lot of options to remake good secondhand things, including tearing things apart and rebuilding them. I remember our own Jag Warrior, who I hope is still a listener, back in the day, she was going to thrift stores buying sweaters made out of good wool and taking them apart and reselling the wool. That's a fabulous idea. That wool is great. It's not going anywhere. It would be great to reknit into something else. So remember, you can take things apart. In that league, I'm using my old fabrics that I didn't use up on my skirts to make the strip quilts I've been talking about, the log cabin quilts. And I'm currently collecting our old t-shirts, and one of my tasks over this 4-day weekend was to cut apart the shirts I have so that they are ready for the next step of production for a t-shirt quilt. So basically, you get a big bin, you take your old t-shirts, and you just cut them up the sides so the front and the back are separated, and you cut them across from the neckline to separate the front from the back. That is step one of prepping your t-shirts to make a t-shirt quilt. So just keep doing that. Just keep collecting them and cutting them and store them in a bin. And when you get enough of them, you start counting them and you decide, do I want to send them off to Project Expat? I can't remember if it's Repat or Expat. Anyway, I've had the link in the show notes. Do I want to send them to a company that will make them into a t-shirt blanket for me? Or would I like to do it myself? At any rate, you're going to get some kind of blanket or comforter with all these wonderful memories of events you've attended through your t-shirts. So you can upcycle a lot of old things. You can get nice fabrics. I had flannel PJ bottoms last year, and I really liked the pink flannel, and I just wore them out at the seams, but the fabric held up. So currently they're becoming part of my strip quilts that I'm talking about. They're in the log cabin squares. In other words, I just took old flannel pajamas and cut those into strips because why not? Why throw them in a landfill? Okay, shop local and buy sustainable brands. Do your homework when you shop. Look for brands that are using sustainable practices, read labels, read advertisements. Watch out for greenwashing, there's a lot of it out there. And do avoid fast fashion and avoid high turnover electronics. Avoid something that, you're going to get a month or two of use out of in it to the landfill it's going to go. When you're giving gifts, you can gift experiences, not things. So you can give, as a gift, things like tickets to concerts or movies, gift certificates to local cinemas when they can use them as they like, gift certificates or tickets to workshops. Try not to buy things that create physical waste because, first of all, those things aren't memorable. Let's put it on the shelf and forget about it, okay? So when you gift experiences, not things, well, since we're all makers, one of them is, crochet Christmas ornaments and hand stitch on the year of the ornament. Give them something they're going to look at and see you and think about. One of the best things I saw this year, and this went very national level on all the social media, so you've probably seen it. This family got one year, 20-something years ago, they got a white tablecloth. And for Thanksgiving, they all signed their names in different colored inks. And the owner of the tablecloth carefully hand embroidered all the signatures using the appropriately colored silk. And the interesting thing, of course, is now it's been 20-something years. Some of those people have died. And she's got this beautiful tablecloth every year. It gets more and more complex. Every year, people still sign it, and she still does the embroidery. She's got this amazing family heirloom that I hope goes on for generations. That's the kind of thing you can do with people. You can have people come to your party and everybody can sign napkins, and then you can agree to embroider them and give them as gifts that will be keepsakes to remember the party by. Things like that. So those are our strategies. I want you to consider encrypted messaging, and one such app is Signal. No, I haven't tested it yet. And also the tips for how to have a more sustainable Black Friday and also holiday buying and gift giving season. Well, the Q project, I did it. I finished with 102 kilometers yesterday, Saturday, November 30th. That came out to 62 miles and some change, probably 63 miles actually. What happened from running 100K in 1 month? Well, first off, I realized I could run a lot more than I had been running. And I came out of it pretty well. Yesterday, my right knee, yesterday morning even before I ran, and yesterday afternoon, my right knee was sore. I was overdoing it just a little bit towards the end. But I was surprised because I really could easily do 100K in a 30-day period, which I hadn't expected. And of course, that's averaging, over 3K a day. And that's really not that much. That's under 2 miles. I would say that's probably a good thing. You want to say about 2 miles a day. It comes out to 62 miles, so that's about right. So I found out that I'm stronger than I thought I was. I found out that I can run 4 and sometimes 5 days in a row and be okay. I found out that I can intersperse short runs of a mile or two in between my longer runs of 3 to 4 miles. I found out that I can do 4 miles. I had been sort of hanging out at about 3 1/4, and it was nice to consistently get closer to 4 and to hang around in the 4 range. At the same time, I learned that I need a GoPro. I learned that the neighbors can be hostile, and that's all part of the learning. I also learned that wearing a GoPro when you're on the run and a neighbor is misbehaving and you turn around and they're on candid camera and they figure it out, you suddenly get to see a whole new side of your neighbors. The scared out of my mind, are you going to give this to the police side of your neighbors? So I learned a lot of things, and sadly I did have to come to grips with the reality that it is an unsafe place out there for women runners. And of course, I would like to pay tribute to poor Lakin. She's a University of Georgia runner, and she was killed on the U of Georgia campus this past week. She was doing everything right. She told people where she was going. She was not running in a remote area. She called 911 in the middle of the run. So that's what it is to be a woman runner in America. So, with that in mind, carry your bear spray. If you can, carry an armed and loaded German Shepherd like I used to do, and carry a GoPro and record. And I am so sorry, and my deepest condolences go out to her family. There is no way to justify it. There is nothing to say. There is no way she could have deserved that. I believe they have caught the guy. We will find out. They're saying it was a white man. She described him, on 911, but they didn't get there in time. All right, I'm sorry to bring down the mood, but I learned a lot from Project Q. By the way, Q, my Inuit friend in Greenland, she did finish her 100K. Like me, she came right in under the wire on the last day. And then she sent me a note and said, how about 200K for December? And I said, who knew you had such a sense of humor? Then I realized she's not kidding. She's very serious because she's running an ice marathon in March. So it is realistic for her to start looking at distance like that. Because really that's only her running 10Ks for a reasonable number of days, like 20 out of 30 days. So, she's coming up in her training. My sense of it is she's a little behind if she's going to do a marathon in March. But it's hard for me to know. I don't know her training plan. I also have no idea how they run a marathon in Greenland on ice, what the conditions will be like the day of the run in terms of temperature, support stations, and stuff like that. So we're wishing our Inuit buddy Q good luck with that. Am I going to do anything like this in December? I'm still thinking about it. Today is December 1st as I record this. I'm not running today. I'm resting that knee. Meanwhile, on Thanksgiving Day, the beloved son and I did the first Santa Clarita Storm, that is their local running team that he aged out of, their first 5K, their first turkey trot. That went very well. It was extremely difficult. They did it on a course that I've already described, that I've already shammed. Packed dirt but soft with a lot of sandy areas and some serious hill work. Surprisingly, I did okay on the time. It was slightly under 5K. It was like just shy. It was like 3.03 miles or something. But it made up for it in the ferocity of the hills. They were very steep, although short. And it was an interesting run. I will be glad not to be on that course again for a while. But we did take a victory selfie, and you can see us sitting there. I am like slurring all my words today because I'm trying not to cough because I have allergies. In case you're wondering why I sound a little bit off in terms of diction, that's why. I'm really not having some deeper bass trouble. It's the allergies are making it hard to articulate all my words because my throat is itching and feeling a bit swollen, a bit uncomfortable. This also stopped me from getting my RSV shot this weekend, which makes me grouchy. At any rate, you can go into the show notes and you can see the happy victory selfie that we did in Starbucks. My son with his giant Frappuccino from Purgatory there. He is wearing the shirt, but you can't see it over our grins and behind the Frappuccino. And then, Saturday morning, we went back for more. And we ran the second Santa Clarita Thanksgiving 5K. Really, I ran it for the shirts. It had beautiful orange leaves on it. And you can see a little bit on my son in that picture. That turned out to be a very pleasant surprise in many ways. I knew the course we were going to run. It's a very pleasant course. It's a good 5K, accurately measured. And we had some distractions, so I was a bit distracted when we got there. But I did run it. I had to run it without my bib. I left my bib home. But they were okay with that. They just said, sure. I said, can you get me a new one? They said, no. I said, don't worry about it. And I just ran it anyway. It was very nice. Because of the turkey trot 48 hours earlier, there was a really small field for this. So I don't think there were even 100 of us out there. In fact, I think there were more like maybe 60 of us out there. So that was very pleasant. I haven't looked at the finishing times to see what my son got with his bib that he wore. But the nice thing was at the end of it, first of all, I came down the chute and I was stunned at the time that I actually really beat my own best at that point. I was running under 13-minute miles. I think the best I'd done before that was like 13 minutes and 40-something seconds. I don't know where I got all the additional energy from, and that may have been part of Project Q, of doing all that running this month. But I came through a lot faster than I expected. I was absolutely shocked when I came up the ramp and the clock said 39 minutes and some change. So that was really lovely. Also, the person in front of me really charged up the finish ramp, which means I found myself at one end of the ramp looking towards the finish line, and it was dead empty except for the spectators. And they were all looking after the person who just charged down the ramp. So I did what you have to do. I started waving at them and gesturing for them to start cheering. And they laughed, they figured out what I was doing, and they did all start cheering and applauding, and I started giving them thumbs up. And so I got a great finish line picture, but I'm not going to buy it. It has funny marks over my face from the professional photographer who'd like to sell it to me for an unreasonable price. But at any rate, I must say I had a great finish line. And then they gave us gift cards to Dunkin' Donuts, which surprised me. They had a Dunkin' truck. Turns out they partially sponsored the race, and they were giving us $5 gift cards that have to be used by the end of December. So I got to the truck and I asked them, do you have coffee without sugar in it? And they said no, so they gave me an extra gift card. So the beloved son took me to Dunkin', which is the first time I've ever done that in my entire life. And it was interesting. They didn't have anything to sweeten my coffee, but I used sugar-free vanilla syrup in it, and it was very enjoyable. So you can see a picture of us in Dunkin', me, a first-time Dunkin' person, and we are holding up the medal and celebrating together. So there are two happy pictures. So upcoming, we just have the Jingle Jog for the remainder of this year, December 21st. So that is the beginning of my Romule holiday, so I'm looking forward to that. And you can see my other upcoming runs there. In the Fluffy books, I am still in Death on the Tiber. I'm really only like 4 chapters into it. I'm enjoying it. I just haven't been making time to read. It's been a little crazy. Meanwhile, I am still listening to the Nonsuch at night, and this is definitely one of my favorite Heyer novels. I'm really enjoying it. Something I really like, well, it is time for the bed wedge pillow. When you're having problems with your breathing at night, when things are dusty and the winds are blowing and your allergies are going crazy, you want to sleep upright, this is the guy. You can see the ad for the one I have in my bed. It cost me about $25. It's extremely firm foam, and you can see the various positions you can use it for. The first position is what I use it for the most, to read in bed. It's extremely comfortable, but also if you have acid reflux or GERD, this is very nice to raise your head above your body so that acid doesn't creep up your esophagus. And you can also use it to raise your legs when you need to. And let me tell you, after a good long race, that is a very nice thing to have to get the feet up. So something I really like, it's the bed wedge pillow. I was going to give you a link to Amazon. However, they no longer have mine in stock. And again, this is one of those things, when the tariffs hit, I'm sure the price will go up. So you might want to go look at this if you're going to think about it, or show it to somebody in your family to give you for Thanksgiving. Put a lid on it. I did make the amazing pumpkin spice cake, and I have given you a link there to the file in my Proton account so you can download the recipe. I've had this recipe here quite a few times last year, so that's why I'm not repeating it. In the meantime, I was enjoying Keto Snack's idea for crispy turkey nuggets. Now, I have to tell you, Keto Snacks is not the most reliable choice for recipes in 2 respects. One, many of his recipes are not keto. He thinks they are. I don't know why. I don't think he's all that bright, but he's the sort of like, you know, like having a guy in the kitchen going, how many ways can we use the air fryer and stay keto? It's not bad. Some of his stuff, you know, involves some very good ideas, but his recipes are often not successful for me. So I'm warning you. He just says a cup of leftover turkey breast that you've chopped finely, a cup of shredded cheddar, 1 large egg, and any seasonings. Mix it all together, shape it into nuggets, put it on a baking sheet at 400 for 20 minutes, take them out and enjoy. I would tell you, yeah, you may have to vary this to get it dry enough and yet keep it moist enough to form nuggets. That's one of the problems I would see here. This is often a problem with his recipes, but if you'd like to get rid of that leftover turkey meat, this is certainly a good way to do it. Make your turkey McNuggets with it. And the good news, it's now time for the tea tasting. Yes, it is time to open the wonderful, wonderful advent calendar that I got from Plum Deluxe. I got the herbal calendar, and there you can see various pictures. There's what it looks like in its tin. It's a very pretty tin. And there are all the packages with just their days on them. And then there's the cardboard guide with the doors. So you open a door and you find out what is your tea for today. And for today, it is their lovely Decaf Black. Officially, they call this the House Blend Decaf Black. This is a very floral black tea, but it's decaffeinated. They're using blue and white Malvia flowers and vanilla essence in it. I remember this of old. I really like this one. Now, decaf teas for me are often a little too acidic, and I would rather get the full calf without the extra acid bump that decaffeination seems to give these guys. But this is a lovely tea, and I cannot recommend it enough. It has all the beautiful full body and scent of a sort of floral English breakfast. It's got a nice depth to it. The flowers make it pretty in the cup or in the strainer. They don't add a whole lot else to it, but who can complain about a decaf black, a good healthy black with good flavor with vanilla added into it, right? Vanilla essence, of course not. So this is a lovely first start for the wonderful Plum Deluxe Advent Calendar. I'm sure you can still get it on their website, which is just plumdeluxe.com. And this brings us to the blather. Well, the feast. There was a picture of the feast with the boys. My husband did a phenomenal job. On Thursday, we got up, we ran the race, my son and I, while my husband stayed home and cooked. We came home and I basically spent the day being semi-conscious, and I think I was working on the elf Wooble. I don't remember much else. I was really, really exhausted. I was finishing up paperwork. I was doing all sorts of little things, wishing I could get to the list of things that I wanted to do. However, I did work on the quilt square, so that was something good. Friday morning, I had plans. I was going to go down to Santa Clarita, run a bunch of errands. That's when I found out somebody scammed my PayPal. They hacked it. And I found it out because they were trying to order coffee makers from Keurig. So I spent Friday morning, basically a lot of my Friday was hijacked. I spent the morning calling the police in the towns where the coffee makers had been sent, calling my local police and being interviewed by them, calling my bank and telling them the problem, but nothing had been collected yet, contacting Keurig, who claimed they couldn't do anything about it. They'd only gotten the orders that morning, and yet they claimed they could not stop them. Well, too bad for them, because I stopped the payment at the bank. So sorry, Keurig, you really should have stopped those orders instead of BSing me. It was a very challenging and difficult thing. I ended up going into the bank in person, and they were very, very helpful. But so far, we have lost no money. And at this point, we shouldn't, because Keurig can't bill me. These are stolen goods. They can't punish me for stolen goods. And the bank is saying, no, we're not going to release that money. This should be interesting to see how it plays out. But it did take all morning to work on that and change passwords. I took all my payment cards off PayPal. So sure, you can break into my PayPal if you think you can. Now, we changed the password. I doubt you really can. But even if you do, there's nothing there to pay with. So good luck on that, boys. And they didn't like that. So apparently they figured out what I'd done, because I suddenly got a huge amount of spam email, all from one source, well, from one mailing list company, MailChimp. I just got dozens of emails in all different languages from all different companies that use MailChimp. So these guys, it's pretty obvious it was them, just got angry, and so they tried to punish me. However, remember that thing I told you before, like last episode or 2 episodes back? I just went in, unsubscribed, and then went in and listed it all as junk mail. So I had the problem for all of one mail cycle, and it went away. So that was that. So, sorry, boys, you're not going to get any money. Sorry, boys, the police are now on to you in 3 cities. Sorry, boys, Keurig's going to come after you. Sorry, boys, not my problem anymore. But I will be going through all my passwords and making sure anything that's been compromised, I'll be using my phone to track into them and change them to very complicated randomized password from my iOS system. Thank you, Apple. Nonetheless, just to keep things spicy, somehow on Wednesday, seeing patients, I cracked the face of my phone. So another part of Friday's hijacking was I had to spend an hour in the Apple store down in Valencia getting that fixed. But it was nice. I got them to upgrade my battery as well. It was a worthwhile stop. While I was there, I did get wireless earphones with a microphone that I can use with all of my stuff. So that was a pretty nice thing. Was it on sale? No. Black Friday, no sale, but this is a thing I've been looking for forever, and I did get it. Meanwhile, so I was trapped at the mall waiting for the iStore up there to work on my phone. So I did go through the mall, and it really was surprising. I just bought things I knew I needed that I had already identified. I hadn't gone to the mall literally in years, and I said, if I go to the mall, I'm only going to buy these things, and that's exactly what I did. So it was very satisfying. I mean, I went into Victoria's Secret and got some underclothing And I got a nice little personalized ornament. We get one every year from the same people there. Got that done. And then picked up my repaired phone and my new earphones and was very, very happy. So it was a strange Friday. It wasn't what I expected, but I got a lot of good things done and I started to pull myself together, which is good. And in the midst of all this, one thing that really emerged was the family teamwork, that my husband really got behind me on this recovery effort from the scamming. He was really, really helping me. He was contacting people. He sat with me while the police interviewed me. He did a whole lot of good stuff. And so we talked a lot this weekend about teamwork because he did the Thanksgiving meal. Normally what happens, he cooks all day and I buzz in about once every 90 minutes, clean all the dishes while he continues to cook and go away. Well, he did all that himself this year. It was really impressive. I came home from the race and found a clean kitchen with most of the cooking done. I was so impressed. And so we had Thanksgiving on the table and cleaned up lickety-split. I had made a lot of pumpkin desserts, including the pumpkin spice cake. He had made a pumpkin pie. I cannot tell you, it just went so extremely well with all the teamwork. So that was a very, very happy thing that in the midst of getting a hijacked, half Friday, we actually did a lot of good family teamwork, and that was very satisfying. And then last night, a gift box from my employer arrived. It's beautiful as it always is, and it came with this lovely leather and plastic kind of basket, and you can see it in the picture. That basket is now sitting on my floor filled with finished woobles and the ones that can't go on the tree, the Halloween ones and whatnot. And meanwhile, there were actually things in it I could eat, so I did eat the Gouda cheese and the mixed olives packed in water, and I still have a tapenade and some nice English tea. So that was a pretty good basket. You can see my son hovering around the rest of it in the pictures. He's very excited about those other goodies. Cookies, cakes, little crackers, cheese straws, the sort of thing. From there, you can go on to our community resources. All of our sponsors from CFRX have been incorporated into the link that says my favorite resources to buy. The entire list can be found right here. But there are all the links that gather together all of the lists of things that I have mentioned in previous episodes to use, pattern libraries, books, things that I buy to support my knitting and crocheting and spinning, and the links to techniques I like. Finally, there is a link to my Linktree and a very bad picture of my Linktree, which you cannot click on. You have to go to the actual Linktree to get it. That just tells you my most common links. Finally, we have the calendars. First, there are the events that happen routinely in the Santa Clarita Valley. All of the groups mentioned there are on Facebook. That's where you have to look them up. And their meetups are listed there in my calendar notes. And then my calendar. At this point, we are 20 days away from Romule, hooray! And also the Jingle Jog. And I am really looking forward to that. And you can see my later races on there as well. The whole goal here, of course, is to keep myself exercising and running. And then finally, CFR 11, I have not touched it, but hopefully over the Christmas holidays, I'm going to start getting the links together and working on that. Minerva gets the last word, and there you can see her ignoring me. She's lying and she's looking very startled because I found a thing on a cat channel that talks about cat language, and believe it or not, they taught me how to say come here in cat, and it sounds like meow, meow. And they showed a whole series of cats responding to it. So I did it to Minerva. I'm doing it right now, and she's sound asleep here. She woke up, she looked at me sleepily, and she did little I love you eyes at me, so I did I love you eyes back. She has come once when I've used it. The rest of the time, she looks very annoyed. It's almost like I'm using her language in some sort of offensive way. So we now know the word for come here in cat. And we also know all the feline gestures that go with, who do you think you are? I don't have to listen to you. Just because you can say a word doesn't mean I have to obey you, etc. Oh well, we go on trying to understand each other better as we go, my Minerva and I. Like you should be trying to understand the people around you and remembering that we are a community. Wasn't that an awkward segue? You bet it was. Meanwhile, we are a community. When we work for the good of the community, we are working for the good of the individual. When the community is strong and mutually supportive, the individual benefits. Having said that, everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.